Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome back to another rebuild review. I'm sorry that I was not able to drop this on Sunday. My PC finally went completely fried after having it for 3 years. A new one's on the way. I'm filming this on my roommate's laptop. But today, we have a rebuild review where we go through an active rebuild, break it down in different sectors, and overall come to a grade. And today, we are looking at the Utah Mammoth / Utah Hockey Club / Arizona Coyotes. And yeah, when looking at this franchise, it has been a pretty rough stretch the last 13 years. If it wasn't for the COVID bubble where they only got in as the 11 seed because of the round robin, they would have 13 straight years of not making the playoffs. The last time that they made the playoffs was that 2012 run to the Western Conference Finals. They basically had two separate rebuilds, kind of like the Max Domi, Dylan Strome, Clayton Keller rebuild, and then the new one with Bill Armstrong drafting guys like Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. For this, much like the Buffalo one, we're only going to look at the more recent one, that being the Bill Armstrong tenure. So yeah, without further ado, we are going to start with the drafting, developing, and before I go show the picks that they've had under Bill Armstrong, context is very much needed for how bad of a situation he inherited, because during that 2020 season, they kind of went for it, trading for Taylor Hall, giving up their first round pick in 2020. They got their first round pick in 2021 stripped away, as well as their 2022 because the prior management had been illegally testing players before the NHL Combine. The NHL absolutely laid down the hammer on them. So no first round pick in 2020, no first round pick in 2021, and no 2020 second round pick. It was a tough spot for Bill Armstrong. But yeah, here we are, the drafting, developing of the Arizona Coyotes, and then I actually have to switch tabs over to the Utah Hockey Club / Utah Mammoth because they're technically two different franchises. For this grade, it's mainly going to be based on who Bill Armstrong drafted and developed, but I also am going to factor in a little bit who he inherited back then and if those guys actually developed solidly. Victor Soderstrom, unfortunately, in 2019, did not exactly pan out for the Arizona Coyotes. Was very good this year in the SHL, and I believe that he signed with the Boston Bruins, but probably not an everyday NHL defenseman at this point. Michelli did develop pretty well, at least his first 2 seasons in the NHL. Very good AHL numbers as well. This year was unfortunate. We'll talk about that more in the trading, but that's still a developmental win at 98th overall to even get 224 games out of him. Nothing much else in the 2019 draft. 2018, Barrett Hayden has become an okay player, obviously at 5th overall with Quinn Hughes at 7th, with a bunch of other guys in that 2018 draft around that range being much better players. But he's like 20-20. Hopefully he can get to like maybe 25-25 next season. Third line center of the future at this point. It's okay developing by Armstrong, but nothing special. Kevin Ball got traded to the Devils in the Taylor Hall deal, so that wasn't really their development, but he's turned into a nice player. Was good this year for the Calgary Flames. Not a ton else in the 2017 draft, and by the time that Armstrong got there in 2016, Keller and Chychrun were already established. Pretty damn good NHLers, so now we're going to go into 2020. Crazy enough, his first pick was Mitchell Miller, which if that name rings a bell, that was the guy that got drafted. Then he got his rights relinquished because there was a scandal, not scandal, but he like bullied some disabled kid. It was really bad for a first draft pick by Bill Armstrong. He's in the KHL now, playing pretty decent. But yeah, that was not a great first pick. Ben McCartney in the 7th round. Okay, AHL depth for a 204th overall pick. You take that. But then we get into 2021, where he actually had some picks in this draft. We'll talk about how he got this pick because this was not their pick. They lost that, taken away by the NHL. But Dylan Guenther at 9th overall, amazing value. I think that this guy is going to be a consistent 40-ish goal scorer based on what he's done thus far in the NHL the last 2 years. What is that? 45 goals in 115 games. He's great. He's on a pretty neat contract that we'll also touch on later. Great value at 9th overall. Josh Doan, I thought at the time, was kind of like a Nepo pick, but he's turned into a pretty solid NHLer. Not the biggest sample size, but this year was like 3rd in the NHL expected goals percentage. Yeah, he was very good also in the AHL. He's a nice little piece. Eventually got traded, but very good drafting for the 37th overall. Ilya Fedotov didn't really turn into anything, unfortunately. Not doing too good in the KHL. JJ Mosier was an overager and jumped immediately into the NHL and had a solid impact. And then was in the Sergachev trade. So that was a pretty solid pick by Armstrong there at 60th overall. Lilberg also, I believe, was an overager. Yep. And although he didn't play for the Arizona Coyotes, solid value at 107th overall. Sam Lipkin is the other guy I want to go over from this draft. Very good college career. Not the best at the AHL right now. Still only 22 years old. maybe can turn into something. National champion at Quinnipiac. Going on to 2022, the first time that he had his own first round pick, and he selected who is probably going to be the franchise superstar, hopefully, in Logan Cooley, considering the fact he had 65 points in 75 games this year, dominated at University of Minnesota. Great progression right now for Logan Cooley, a guy that I am very high on. Arguably goes first in a redraft. I posted a 2022 redraft yesterday. He's either first or second, but Montreal Canadiens fans are probably going to flood my comments now. Connor Geekie at 11th overall. They actually traded up to get this pick. We'll talk about that later. Pretty solid when looking at the fact that he tore up the WHL, already has played NHL games. Not sure how he's going to develop on Tampa Bay just because they have such like a loaded top six. I'm not sure he's going to crack that in the near future. But for the 2022 draft, which was a pretty weak draft, he's looking pretty solid for 11th overall. Maverick Lamoureux, big boy. Not the best AHL production this year, but got some burn at the NHL level as a late first round pick. Pretty solid prospect. Artem Duda, 36th overall. Very solid AHL numbers for a 21-year-old. 29 points in 70 games. For the early second round, Julian Lutz, not quite panning out like you'd maybe want. 13 points in 47 games this year at the AHL level. That's a little bit of a miss of a second round pick. Zuber, 32 points, 65 games in the AHL as a sixth round pick. That's solid there. Moving on to 2023. I really like their 2021 and 2022 drafts because they knocked out that top 10. Not as high on these 2023 drafts. Of course, Michkov did not want to go to Arizona at the time, but even Simashev at 6th, I didn't love this. The stats are a little bit misleading. He's a 6'5", more so defensive defenseman, but at 6th overall, you definitely need some kind of an offensive game. You got to be giving me 25 to 30 points at the NHL level. Maybe he's a lockdown second pair guy, but probably should have went with like a Ryan Leonard or someone else there. Danil Boot at 12th was a little bit surprising, and he was trending very good in his draft year, +1, 21 points in 55 games. Didn't take a huge step this year, and I'm blocking it off, but in the playoffs, only 1 point in 13 games on Locomotive that did win the KHL this season. So that wasn't a fantastic 1-2 punch. Harabel is looking very good, though. 924 this season at UMass Amherst. He's a top 6 to 11 goalie prospect in the NHL. So although I maybe didn't love those first two, maybe potentially got a starter there. Jonathan Cast, I'm going to botch that name, but was looking very good in his freshman year. This year, not quite as impressive at Cornell University. This is a Russian that they had that has been pretty good in the KHL. He was an overager, but 44 points in 66 games might potentially be something there. Justin Kipke in the WHL this year, a 6'3" left-handed defenseman that was around a point per game for the Victoria Royals. That's a nice little piece. We're going to move on to the 2024 draft. Tej Aginla, of course, was at 6th overall. I thought they should have went with like a Zane Parekh. I was ultra high on Parekh. But Aginla is looking pretty good. Should fit very nicely into that top 6. Got hurt this season, unfortunately. Cole Baudouin also didn't love this pick, if I'm going to be honest. And he didn't take a huge step this year at the OHL level. This guy goes to Boston College, is a 6'6" left-handed defenseman. Armstrong loves his big-ass defensemen that are more so defensive guys. 7 points in 30 games on a pretty damn good BC team. Thomas Lavoie, another pretty big guy, 6'4", but showed some offense this year in the QMJHL with 55 points in 60 games. That's very encouraging. Owen Allard was an overager. Did not quite take a step this year at the OHL level, but maybe he can be a bottom sixer going forward. And then moving on to 2025, I do heavily endorse, after not loving the 2023 and 2024 picks, Caleb Desnoyers looks like he can be that ideal second-line center. Behind Logan Cooley, more of a two-way guy, bigger guy at 6'2", 84 points in 56 games. Did that with an injured wrist. He just got wrist surgery. I think he can be a consistent 60 to 70-point second-line center. The rest of their picks here, another big-ass defenseman. Again, Armstrong, if he's going defense, he's going with a big-ass dude. And Yegor Borikov is an overager that had 25 points in 67 games this year in the KHL. So yeah, when looking at the drafting and developing, I think I'm going to go with an A-. His first two top 10 picks, he hit absolutely out of the park. When looking at Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, I wouldn't have selected the guys that he did in 2023 and 2024 in the first round, but I don't think that they're like absolutely insane picks. Simashev still is regarded as a top 35 to 55 prospect in hockey. They got Harabel, who is looking like a very good goalie prospect. So there's a lot to like, considering the fact that they're guys that you're expecting to be at the NHL level by now, have done that. Josh Doan, Mosier as well, have played important NHL games. So I think an A- is about fair. Have not absolutely knocked it out of the park. There are some questionable decisions, but on their high picks as of right now that have played in the NHL, they've been pretty damn good. Next up, the trades. And funny enough, when we did the San Jose Sharks, the first trade that we looked over was when they traded Adin Hill to the Vegas Golden Knights for the Arizona Coyotes in the summer of 2021. They traded Adin Hill to the San Jose Sharks, as well as a 7th-round pick for a 2022 second-round pick. Adin Hill was 24 at the time, had pretty solid stats, but had not really had that big of a sample size. So they got a second-round pick. Unfortunately, that second-round pick was Julian Lutz, who we just looked at, that is not exactly turning into much at the AHL level, but it made sense to trade Adin Hill at the time. It's not like he was this highly regarded prospect, and they got a 2nd-round pick. So it didn't quite work out, but for a team that was heading towards a pretty big rebuild, it was solid value at the time. Next deal in the summer of 2021, Armstrong starts to really weaponize his cap space. He takes on Andrew Ladd in his final years at $5.5 million for 2 second-round picks and a 3rd-round pick. When looking at it, they had all the salary cap in the world. They had to get to the salary cap floor, and Andrew Ladd helped them with that, and they got solid assets for them. Unfortunately, those picks did not exactly pan out, but again, we're going to talk about this a lot. Armstrong was weaponizing his cap space and getting a bunch of assets for it. The next deal in that summer of 2021, he also took on what was viewed as kind of a bad contract at the time of Shane Gothisbehere, got a 2nd-round pick in 2022 to take him on. Shane Gothisbehere had not been the same player since his 65-point season in 2018, but even at the time, it was like, that's a little bit too much. Attaching a 2nd-round pick to get rid of Shane Gothisbehere was kind of crazy, and yeah, he hit the ground running with the Arizona Coyotes, putting up 82 points in 134 games, would go on to get traded for assets at the 2023 deadline. As for that 2nd-round pick, it turned into Artem Duda, who, as we saw, had 29 points in 70 games this year at the AHL level. So thumbs up. Solid asset management by Armstrong. And the day of the 2021 draft, Armstrong probably has his magnum opus when he trades captain Oliver Ekman-Larsson, retaining $990,000, as well as Connor Garland to the Vancouver Canucks for Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Anton Roussel, in the 2021 1st-round pick from the Canucks, which was 9th overall, a 2022 2nd-round pick, and a 2023 7th-round pick. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, while he was definitely an Arizona Coyotes legend, was completely washed up. So the fact that they were able to dump 85% of that contract, and in fairness, Connor Garland was a good player, but attaching that bad of a deal, it basically canceled out on Connor Garland, and Vancouver eventually had to buy out Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which they're still paying a decent amount to do so. The fact they were able to trade that contract, get off most of the cap hit, and get a top 10 pick in the 2021 draft. And the only contracts that they took on, it was $12 million, but there was only 1 year left of those guys' deals, so it's not like they were tied down for multiple years. They basically got Dylan Guenther for Oliver Ekman-Larsson's ass contract, and Connor Garland, who was a good player but was already in his mid-20s and was not going to fully last throughout this rebuild. Then before 2021 free agency, they got a 2nd-round pick to take on the final year of Anton Stralman's contract. With that 2nd-round pick, they eventually took Will Skahan, who is that 6'5" left-handed defenseman from Boston College, who didn't light it up offensively this year, but maybe could potentially be something. On the day of free agency, they traded Darcy Kemper for a 2022 1st-round pick and a conditional 2024 3rd-round pick that did hit, as well as Connor Timmins. When looking at Darcy Kemper, he was a 31-year-old that had been very good in Arizona, but obviously did not have a long-term future with this team, considering they were about to go through a pretty big rebuild. They got a 1st-round pick. That 1st-round pick eventually got traded up to go get Maverick Lamoureux, as well as Tomas Lavoie, who was that 6'4" defenseman that had 55 points in 60 games. Solid deal, win-win for both parties. On September 4th, 2021, they traded away Christian Dvorak for a 1st and a 2nd-round pick. Montreal had just lost Jesperi Kotkaniemi from the offer sheet, so they had to find some kind of center. And in fairness, Dvorak at the time was like a pretty solid 2nd-line center that was only 24 years old. It obviously aged horribly. He fell off. He dealt with injuries. And that 2022 1st-round pick that was from Carolina was eventually moved to trade up and get Connor Geekie. As for that 2nd-round pick, they traded that to go get Sean Thursey 2 off seasons from now. At the 2022 deadline, they traded Ilya Lyubushkin for a 2nd-round pick and Nick Ritchie. Nick Ritchie was on a pretty brutal deal, 2 years to $2.5 million. And as for that 2nd-round pick, they would eventually package that in the Mikhail Sergachev trade. Also at the 2022 deadline, they would give up a 2nd-round pick for 2022 22-year-old Jack McBain, who they actually recently just gave a 5-year deal to at $4.3 million. He's a solid bottom six, kind of like Walmart Sam Bennett kind of player. And as for that second round pick, it turned into Hunter Height, who doesn't really look like much in terms of becoming an NHLer. At the 2022 draft, they traded the 27th overall pick from the Montreal deal, as well as the 34th overall pick and the 45th overall pick to go up to 11th overall in order to get Connor Geekie. As for what those other players became, Beestead went 27th overall, Cam Lund at 34th overall, and Havlet at 45th overall. So it's looking like Connor Geekie is most likely going to be the best player out of the bunch. Also at the 2022 draft, they took on Zach Cassian's contract, 2 years left at $3.2 million to get the 29th overall pick, a 2024 third round pick, a 2025 second round pick, and all they had to give up was the 32nd overall pick. Basically, to take on that contract, they were able to move up 3 spots in the first round, as well as get a second and a third round pick. With that 29th overall pick, they selected Maverick Lamoureux. Meanwhile, the Edmonton Oilers got Reed Schaefer. And that third in 2024 was VT Vasanainen, who is not looking like much, if I'm going to be honest. For 2022 free agency, stop me if you've heard this before, but Bill Armstrong weaponizes his cap space to take on Patrick Nemeth and got 2 second-round picks in order to do so. All he had to give up was Ty Emberson. Nemeth only had 2 years left at $2.5 million, but it was a flat cap system. Meanwhile, that 2025 second-round pick actually eventually somehow got traded back to the New York Rangers, and they selected Malcolm Spence this year. Meanwhile, Utah still has New York's second-round pick in 2026. At the 2023 deadline, they then move off Shane Gothisbehere after a great 1.5 seasons. He had 31 points in 52 games. They get a third-round pick from the Carolina Hurricanes. I thought they maybe should have got a little bit more, but considering the fact that they got a second-round pick just to take on Gothisbehere, the overall Gothisbehere experience was an A+++, kind of like a Jake Wallman, and they still have that 2026 third-round pick from Carolina. Then also at the 2023 deadline, they make a massive trade to kind of commit to stinking the rest of the 2023 season and kind of moving off that prior rebuild. They trade Jacob Chychrun for a first and 2 second-round picks. Chychrun was still only 24 years old, but was going to be 25 in a couple of months and did have 2.5 years left at $4.6 million, which is why they got so much for him. But Bill Armstrong decided we're not going to be really competitive for the next 2.5 years. Let's trade him now instead of once we really enter our window, we have to give him some 8-year deal at $9 million, which the Capitals eventually gave to him. So they decided to ship him off to Ottawa, who were somewhat in the playoff picture. Obviously, they did not make the playoffs in the 2023 season and eventually had to move off Chychrun 16 months later for Nick Jensen and a third-round pick. Meanwhile, for Arizona, they got the 12th overall selection and drafted Daniil Boot. Meanwhile, that 2024 second-round pick was later traded in the John Marino deal, and they still have Ottawa's 2026 second-round pick. They have 3 seconds in 2026. They weren't done cooking at the 2023 draft, though, as they shipped out Nick Bjugstad for a third-round pick and Mike Kesselring. Bjugstad would go to the Edmonton Oilers, play like 20 games, then re-sign with the Arizona Coyotes that summer. Meanwhile, Mike Kesselring became a very important right-handed defenseman for their team and was a pretty pivotal part of the JJ Peterka trade because Buffalo badly needed right-handed defensemen. Meanwhile, that third-round pick became Vadim Mraz, who was pretty solid this year in Russia, as we showed before. Now we got the summer of 2023, and he ships out a second-round pick that he got from the Christian Dvorak trade to go get Sean Durzi, who was a half a point per game guy with the LA Kings, only had $1.5 million cap hit on the books the following season. He had 43 points in his first season with the Arizona Coyotes, handled like 24 minutes a night, and this year unfortunately got hurt early, but had very good analytics. As for that second-round pick, the LA Kings a couple days later would use that second-round pick to go trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois, which did not really work out for them, and that ended up being the 37th overall pick, which Winnipeg used to get Alphonse Frey. There was no other notable trades during the 2023 offseason or the 2024 trade deadline, so now we fast forward a full year to the 2024 draft, where they trade up 24th overall to select Cole Beaudoin, giving up the 38th overall pick, the 71st, and a 2025 second-round pick. Cole Beaudoin to the Utah Hockey Club, a guy that I think can be a solid middle sixer. But when looking at the picks that they gave up, it turned into Ilya Nabokov, who's a pretty damn good Russian goalie prospect right now, Brody Zimmer, who's pretty solid, as well as Malcolm Spence. So I'm going to be honest, although these guys have not touched the NHL ice, I'm not going to act like they've definitively lost this trade. In terms of the value right now, it isn't looking great. I mean, this literally might be like his worst trade. So if this is his worst trade as of right now, he's doing pretty goddamn good. Utah at the time had a pretty brutal defense core. It was Sean Dursey and then like Mike Kesselring or Valimaki were their number 2 and number 3. So on day 2 of the draft, he gets to work trading for Mikhail Sergachev, giving up JJ Mosier, Connor Geeky, a 2025 second round pick, and a 2024 seventh round pick. Sergachev was a decent risk at the time, considering he broke his leg during the 2024 season and had only played like 2 games in the playoffs and only like 17 minutes a night and had 7 years left at $8.5 million. He took a shot. Sergachev, 53 points this year, playing over 25 minutes a night. He looks like he's going to be well worth it at 27 years old for the next 5 to 7 years at $8.5 million. Maybe Connor Geeky does turn into an absolute stud, but JJ Mosier was pretty expendable. A second round pick. They had a million second round picks throughout this rebuild. So it's looking like at this point that they're going to win this deal, especially considering the need for a legit offensive top pair defenseman like Mikhail Sergachev. Also on day 2 of the draft, they get John Marino in a 5th round pick for 2 second round picks, really solidifying their defense core, especially on that second pair right-handed defense. Marino unfortunately did get hurt this season, still had solid analytics in the games that he did play. As for those second round picks, the first became Mikhail Yegorov, who was very solid this year at the college level, a top 7 to 13 prospect. Granted, they already had Harabel, so they didn't really need a goalie. And as for that 2025 second round pick, it ended up becoming Ben Kavan, who was an okay player in the USHL this year. No big trades really happened during the 2024-2025 season, besides the fact that early on in the season, they gave up a 3rd round pick to get Oli Mata because Marino and Dursey both went down early. Mata was actually pretty solid as a defensive defenseman. And we finally get to this offseason where, of course, they traded for JJ Peterka, who wanted out of Buffalo, giving up Josh Doan and Mike Kesselring. I'm very high on Doan and Kesselring, but it is without a doubt that JJ Peterka is most likely going to be the best player from this draft, considering he had 68 points last year, and he is a perfect fit stylistically for the Utah Mammoth. They are a run and gun transitional team. JJ Peterka thrives in transition, and at 23 years old, locking him up on a 5-year contract at $7.7 million. He should be well worth that as the cap continues to rise. The other deal that they do in the 2025 offseason is trade away Matthias Michelli for a 3rd round pick. It's unfortunate that he had such a bad season this year, going from high 50s point pace to then 18 points in 55 games this season. But they just had other wingers coming up within the system, especially after they got JJ Peterka. He became very expendable. I think he's going to be very good in Toronto, and Toronto definitely won this deal. But given the context of how much Michelli's trade value dropped, I don't think this is an end-of-the-world kind of thing. I don't think Michelli is going to be a consistent 70-point guy unless he's stapled to Austin Matthews. So yeah, for the trade section of this, I think I'm going to go with an A, and it's probably closer to an A+ than an A-. He absolutely knocked it out of the park when it came to trades, whether it was taking on bad contracts when they had to just reach the salary cap floor, weaponizing that cap space, and moves like Ladd, Gothisberg, Cassian, Nemeth, trading some of his older players like OEL and Kemper for very solid assets. I mean, the OEL deal is one of the best deals of the 2020s point-blank period, as well as moving off Chikrin and finding the right trade partner where you eventually get the 12th overall pick for him, as well as 2 second-round picks, moving up within the draft because you have all these seconds and a late first. Go get a guy like Connor Geeky, the Bjugstad deal, picking up an underrated right-handed 6'5" defenseman like Mike Kesselring, and then when it was time to actually improve the team, trading for Sergachev and Dursey, not giving up a single first-round pick in either of those deals. Yes, I know Connor Geeky was a former first-round pick, but trading those deals both look fantastic, and then swooping in on Peterka, trading 2 solid young roster role players, but not to the level of JJ Peterka. Yes, I did not exactly love the trade up for Cole Baudouin or the Michelli dump, but if those are your worst deals, you're doing an amazing job. So the trades get an A in my opinion. Now we're moving on to the signings and extensions, and there's not nearly as many signings and extensions as, say, the trades. When you're in a rebuild, you're trading a lot of pieces. You're not signing and extending a bunch of guys. The first one is Vejmelka, 3 years, $2.725 million. This was coming off a season where he had an 898 in 52 games. Pretty horrible analytics, but he bounced back in a big way in 2023, at least analytically, and in the last 2 years has been a pretty solid starter for them. This year having a 904 in between like 13 to 17 goals saved above expected, depending on what site you use. So for below $3 million, like 2 of those seasons, he was a pretty solid starter in the NHL. When Lawson Krause was a restricted free agent in the summer of 2022, he gave him a deal of 5 years at $4.3 million. He had 20 goals and was over half a point per game that season. When looking at his first 2 years of this contract, was like mid-20 goals, around half a point per game, playing 16 to 17 minutes a night. Unfortunately, this year it kind of fell off. His role diminished a decent amount, and he only had 12 goals, 6 assists, playing under 14 minutes a night. The next 2 years might not be worth 4.3 $2.3 million. So not a great deal, but those first 2 years was easily worth around $5-ish million. So this is probably like a B minus, C plus kind of contract. During 2023, unrestricted free agency, he signed some guys to short-term deals kind of to get to the salary cap floor, giving Alex Kerfoot a 2-year deal at $3.5 million. Nick Bjugstad re-signed after being traded to the Edmonton Oilers on a 2-year deal at 2.1, and Jason Zucker on a 1-year deal at 5.3. These weren't fantastic deals. They probably overpaid a little bit for these guys, but at the time, they just needed veterans, guys to fill out the overall forward core and provide leadership and experience. Also, in that summer of 2023, Michelli signed a 3-year deal at $3.425 million. I probably thought it was crazy and they should have went longer term with him. He had a great track record leading up to that in Liga as well as in the AHL and had 49 points in 64 games in that rookie season. He had a great first year and was looking like a $5-6 million player. But of course, this season, it did kind of come crashing down, 18 points in 55 games. So bridging him actually definitely was the right call in the situation compared to if they wanted to go a 5 to 6 year deal. Probably would have been $5 to $6 million at the time, and they would not have been able to trade him to the Toronto Maple Leafs, sort of attach assets to move off him. The summer of 2024, after Sean Durzee's very solid first season, kind of as the de facto number one defenseman, they gave him a 4-year deal at $6 million. Again, he did get hurt this season, but this deal only goes up until he's 29, 30 years old. And if he's healthy, he should be well worth $6 million. Much like in 2023, in the unrestricted free agency period of 2024, they gave out some short-term, low AAV deals to kind of more so experienced guys that weren't quite ready to take a huge jump, giving Kevin Stenlin a 2-year deal at $2 million and Ian Cole 1 year at 3.1. Perfectly fine depth moves. Also in that summer, they had Barrett Hayden as a restricted free agent. They decided to give him a 2-year deal at $2.65 million because although he had 43 points in 2023, and that included 38 points in his final 49 games when he really started playing with Keller and Schmaltz, the following year he broke his hand, only had 10 points in 33 games. So they opted for a bridge. It's kind of looking like the wrong decision considering the fact he had 20 goals, 26 assists, 46 points this year as kind of their second line center and probably will get some serious kind of contract next summer. They maybe should have gone to 4 to 5 years in this contract and would have had some surplus value when they started to enter their window. However, unlike Hayden, their other top 10 pick, Dylan Gunther, got an absolute bag 9 months before he was supposed to become a restricted free agent, getting 8 years, $7.14 million. Some people thought this deal was crazy considering the sample size. I saw what he did in the WHL, in the AHL, as well as his limited NHL action. Knew he was going to kill it. Was putting up 30 and 30 pace already at 20 years old. And clearly, based on this season, having 27 goals, 33 assists, 60 points in 70 games. That's like his floor going forward. And even if that is his floor, considering he's 21 years old, the next 8 years, if right now he signed a contract and now he's just the player that he was going to be for the rest of it, he'd get $8.5 million. I think he's only going to get better. And this is going to be one of the best contracts in the NHL. Again, it doesn't even kick in until this season. 8 years. $7.14 million for a guy of Dylan Gunther's quality and is only going to get better. Around the 2025 deadline, they decided to not really sell that much, and instead they re-sign Ian Cole 1 year, $2.8 million, re-sign Kerfoot 1 year, $3 million, and give Olli Mata after his solid play 3 years, $3.5. I don't love any of these contracts, so to be honest, again, these guys are more so depth pieces. It's not going to kill them, but I don't think they got some kind of great value on any of them. Also, around this time, they give Karel Vejmelka a 5-year deal at $4.75 million, so kind of low-end starter money, not too much term. And as long as he can just be what he was this season, a top 13 to 20 goalie in the NHL, 905 goaltending in 50-ish games. Harabel might eventually take the starting job for him, but again, in year 4 or 5 of this contract, that's going to be backup money, so another solid contract by Armstrong. Then this offseason, after trading for JJ Peterka, they immediately signed him to a 5-year deal at $7.7 million. Would have liked them to get this to 6-7 years because you're not buying out a ton of UFA years on this contract, but still, at $7.7 million, as long as he's just mid-60s points with the salary cap going up, this only covers till he's 28 years old. There's no age risk on this. This is going to be a very good contract. Unrestricted free agency, he actually gives out some deals to some very old guys that has solid term. He gives Nate Schmidt 3 years at $3.5 million, 33 years old. Brandon Tanev, 33 years old, 3 years, $2.5 million. This is going to break them. This is a combined $6 million, but I don't love the idea of giving these guys 3 seasons from now that much money. They might eventually have to move off these contracts. These guys are obviously great veteran leaders, but I'm not sure I would have signed these deals. I don't think this moves the needle and might end up being a negative in a couple of years. And the last one is Jack McBain, 5 years, $4.25 million. As long as he can just be a mid 30-ish point guy, which he was close to this year, as well as throwing out 250 hits a season, as I talked about before, kind of like a Walmart Sam Bennett on your third line. That's perfectly fine. He's only 25 years old. This deal only goes till he's 29. It's a solid contract. It's third line money. So for the signings, I think I'm going to go with a B+. The Dylan Guenther deal is the clear highlight of this, A++++. All the deals that are 4 or more years, I do like a decent amount. There are some kind of bad deals between the 1 to 3 year range, but overall, a very solid job. It would be closer to an A- than a B, but I think B+ is about fair. We don't have the largest sample size. The Logan Cooley deal is going to play a huge factor. It might shoot up if they get him on an 8x8 or something like that. But I think right now, in terms of the signings and extensions, B+ is about fair. Now on to the results section, our final section, and the results have been pretty solid, at least on the ice. Their first season, 54 points in 56 games. They were still figuring stuff out and eventually stripped a decent amount away in Darcy Kemper, OEL. Garland then went down to 57 points, which was the lowest point of the rebuild, then up to 70 points in the 2023 season, 77 in 2024, and this year, 89. This is the real make or break season. I'm going to apply a grade, unlike San Jose, where they're still at the bottom. I didn't give them a grade. I'm going to give him a B+. It's gone well. Again, 57 to 70 to 77 to 89. This is the real make or break year. If they make the playoffs with 97 points, the results jump up to like an A. That's a perfectly linear rebuild. But if they kind of stay as a high 80s team, it probably goes down to a B-. So I'm going to go with a B+. They've been about on schedule, if that makes sense. They've gotten better a decent amount every single year, 13 to 7 points to 12 points. It's been very solid, but they've not made the playoffs yet, so I don't think you can be in the A's with the results, but I think a B+ is fair. So yeah, when looking at the Utah Mammoth, I'm going to go with an A- overall for their rebuild review. It probably is closer to a B+ though than an A in this situation, but still, it has been very good. They have a bunch of young, proven NHL players, and even some of their older guys, Clayton Keller and Sergachev, are still 2016 draftees, 27 years old. They got guys like Guenther, Peterka, and Sergachev locked up long-term on very team-friendly contracts. Dursey and Keller are on cheap cap hits the next 2 to 3 years. They got to get Logan Cooley locked up, hopefully soon. But yeah, they're in a very good spot. You look at them and an Ottawa Senators, I think they're the same level like right now, but unlike Ottawa, they still have a lot of reinforcements coming up. They still have, in my opinion, I think I had them 5th ranked on my prospect pool rankings, considering they have guys like Denoyer, Danil Boot, Aginla, Simashev, Lamoureux, Harabel to potentially be the successor to Vejmelka in net. They are in a very good spot. I think that they are going to make the playoffs this season. Now, in terms of getting to that true contendership level, it's really just going to come down to whether or not Logan Cooley becomes a top 20, top 15 player in the entire NHL. I don't think that they can win with Clayton Keller being their best forward. I love Clayton Keller, but he can't be your best forward on a legit Stanley Cup winning team. He's not even at the same level as like a Ryan O'Reilly in 2019. Very good player, but Logan Cooley really needs to become this franchise piece. Like San Jose, we gave him an A. They have that franchise piece in Macklin Celebrini. I am certain that that guy's going to be a superstar. Logan Cooley, the jury is still kind of out. He does a lot of things at a high level, but he does still have some deficiencies to his game. So if Logan Cooley becomes a superstar, Dylan Guenther becomes a consistent 40-goal, 50-assist, 90-point guy, and Simashev does become that lockdown defenseman, that's also something where they don't really have an under 25 defenseman that I love. Sergachev's still pretty young. But yeah, they're in a very good spot. And they also still have picks, 3 second-round picks next year to make things happen. They are in an awesome spot. Armstrong has not rushed this and has been really opportunistic in terms of bringing in pieces like Sergachev, Dursey, and Peterka. I don't know why I blanked on that, while also still maintaining a very, very good prospect pool. Like if you told me that they were going to get Peterka, I thought they would have had to trade a TJ Ginla or something like that. They still have a fantastic prospect pool. They're still one of the most young, exciting teams heading into next season that probably should be a playoff team next year. It is a really good spot. Do they have the upside of a San Jose with the Misa Celebrini and a potential top 5 pick coming in 2026? No, but they're a lot more proven up until this point, and they have more bases covered across the team. So as a result, I'm going to go with an A-. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about this rebuild review? What grade would you give the Utah Mammoth / Utah Hockey Club / Arizona Coyotes? Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know which team I should do next. I'm probably going to head back to the Eastern Conference. Did 3 Eastern Conference teams, then 2 Western Conference teams. Let's go back to the Eastern Conference next week. Flyers, Canadians, Columbus Blue Jackets, something like that. I'll be seeing you in the next one. New PC coming, so hopefully the streams aren't as laggy as they've been of late. Peace.